Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to my class. So I just want to thank you for being here and for attending last week. But today, as I mentioned last week, we are going to be doing a Hot Girls Guide to the Grid introduction and what to know about the Formula One. As always, brought to you by myself, Erin Myson, Bachelor of Psychology Honours and candidate PhD. So today's tutorial, we are going to be doing the bare basics, basically starting with an everything you need to know and a who's who on the grid. So first things first, we're going to start with just a little bit of background. So the Formula One is the top tier of a whole bunch of kind of racing groups. The Formula One, the Formula Two, the Formula Three, and the Formula One Academy. You don't really need to know the details. All you have to know is that basically the shittier the rank, the younger they are. People start their kids racing literally when they're like 4. Stay tuned for next week if you want to learn more about the drama off the grid when I tell you about the abuses young Max Verstappen faced at the hands of his former professional driving father in an effort to make him the Tiger Woods of the Formula One world. Spoiler, he achieved it. But yeah, so essentially people kind of keep their eyes on the Formula 2 performances to see who might be a good candidate for Formula 1. Where are the girls, you may be asking? I mean, they're coming maybe. This year there is a Formula 1 females, but not a lot of people are watching that. I am watching it, but it's just one of those things where apparently the only part of a sport that actually interests men is the cocks of other men. So yeah, the same sport, but if you have a vagina instead, somehow not as interesting anyway. It's the creme de la creme of cars. So this is something that took me a while to get my head around. I would always be like, well, why don't they just go faster? Like, okay, is there all these issues with the cars or, like why isn't anyone doing X, Y, and Z? And my colleague, Dr. Roche, essentially said, these are the forefront of car engineering and design. So even like the transition that we're starting to see post Daddy Musk with like electronic cars or whatever, that very much is something that's been done in the Formula One literally years ago, and we'll see those advancements in ready-to-buy cars sometime in the next 10 years. So it's the creme de la creme of driving, drivers, innovation, cars. Very interesting stuff, but not for me. I am in it for the drama. It is a global event. So the racing season is X many weeks. It's like over a bunch of months, and they literally go all over the place. So some places they have more gaps than others. Like in coming to Australia, it'll have been 2 weeks since the last race, but often like they'll go to Hungary, Budapest, Las Vegas, Singapore, Japan, Abu Dhabi. They go all over the fucking shop. It's very big. Winner, winner. And by that, I mean there are 2 different kinds of winners. There is the world champion for the boy, for the winner, whoever got the most points. And don't worry if you don't know what I mean by points. I'm going to go into that in a couple of slides' time. But we also have what is called the Constructors' Championship. And that one's for the boys. Because something that I'm going to kind of reiterate, I was tempted to make a slide about it, but I figured it's going to like permeate across all the slides. It truly is a team effort. If you ask the engineers and the technical experts, they say that the best thing for Formula One would be to make driverless cars because, yeah, like then you would truly see how good the cars are. Then on the other hand, people make the argument that, well, if that was true, you could just put anyone in the same car as the previous winner and they should be able to beat everyone. No. So yeah, it's kind of this push and pull of how much of it is explained by the car, how much of it is explained by the driver. It's kind of like a nature versus nurture debate. It's somewhere in between, depending on who's making the car and who's driving it. So for that reason, you have a Constructors' Cup, which is basically formulated on, like the points that you incur and how well the teams did and how well the drivers did for the team. It's basically your team did the best. Good for you. And the World Championship is for the guy who did the best. So you can have an individual champion. Grand Prix weekend, it kind of looks like this. So every location they go to, there's three big things that happen over the course of the weekend. The first are the free practice sessions. It's exactly what it sounds like. They just get to practice on the track. Then you have the qualifying sessions. This is like definitely not a race. It's essentially in order to determine who gets to sit where on the grid when they start the race, the big race, the Grand Prix. Um, who gets to go at the front, who has to go behind. It's all based on getting a really good lap in the qualifying, so being the fastest. And yeah, that's what happens on qualifying day. It's usually on the day, well, it's always on the day before the race, and then you have the race day. So just, I mean, I'm not going to get into all the drama, but just you have to know to like start appreciating what's going on here. It's very political. Money is everything. Even things like new locations. So there's some drama kind of going on at the moment, especially last year, about like new locations, because as the show Drive to Survive is getting bigger, they are like building their fan base in America. And previously there was only the Miami Grand Prix, and now they want to have one in Vegas. So last year they had one in Vegas because it was like the biggest thing in the world. And like one of the cars in the practices, so like not even in the race, drove over because it's a normal road, it's like the Las Vegas Strip. They drove over like a manhole, and because of the amount of down pressure on the back of the car, it like popped up and fucked the car, and they had to spend like $500,000 getting it fixed, and they lost all these places and shit like that. So money is everything, because logic would be like, maybe let's not do that. But they did it anyway. Also, sponsorship pressures. These businesses run on like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of yearly budget. And so they've got massive sponsors, and they'll kind of do and say whatever they need to get money. And again, I won't get into this today, but essentially you've got the right choice and then the right choice. So this is everything from like, there are people currently driving for different teams. And I mean this with all sincerity, they are only driving because they bring in a certain country or cultural demographic. So there is like a Japanese driver who is fine, but probably not the best, but they'll keep him on the team because they are a car company that is based in Japan. So they want to keep Yuki Tsunoda on. This is the same for like a Thai driver and a Chinese driver. There's also, you know, things about, they had this whole, we drive for love, we drive for each other, but they continue to race in the Middle East where LGBTQI people are persecuted by the tens of thousands every year. So it's this like push and pull of like, we want to do the right thing, but we also want to make money, 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 money. On that note, there's shitloads of Saudi oil dollars in the Formula One, because if there's one thing other than humiliating and hurting their wives, women, the girls, the gays, and the theys that rich Middle Eastern men seem to love, the other one is cars. So the other thing is some politics with the drivers. I won't get into this today, but there's kind of this ever-long question of when do I move on versus where do I go versus when do I quit. So some drivers are like, some drivers are only on the track because they support other drivers and that's their role. They're not like, although they always want to do well, they kind of know they're not going to be the grand champ. So they're just there to support the other person on their team to get more points for them. There's also some people that I'll mention later that were kind of like the big next thing, and then they fucked up somehow, and now they're just grinding to stay on the grid, even though they're sucking and doing a really bad job. Because ultimately, yeah, some people do it for the win and some people do it for the cash. You have certain drivers who are just literally born and bred and raised to win and drive. And then others who seem to just kind of be like, you know what? I will fucking drive for this team that has absolutely no chance of doing well this year because I want to make some goddamn money, honey. Oh, and daddy's favorite. So there's one team where the team principal, and I will explain what that means in a later slide, basically bought the team and immediately put his son on the team. And the son sucks fucking eggs and is shit. And genuinely, I think I could drive better, but he's daddy's favorite. So he stays on the team. Thank you very much. He's the team principal and the owner. So, terms, tires, some things to know. So when it comes to tires, ultimately the interesting thing about Formula One is that these are tires that have absolutely no tread. They just grip the fuck out of the road. You have three different types of tires: soft, medium, hard. The soft ones, you get less wear out of them because they're softer, but they'll make you go a little faster because they're a little softer and they basically like kiss the ground better. Medium is medium, hard is harder. So it's like it gives you none of the benefits of the soft tires in grip and speed, but you can stay out for longer. And there's all sorts of shit there, but that's kind of all you need to know. Trust me, on race day, you're going to hear shitloads about tire and tire politics. So I thought I'd mention it. Ultimately, weather, track, and car preferences dictate this. So there's no like coverall. It's not like all of the cars are going to start on medium or hard tires. It really comes down to like team secrets and what they're running with that year. Obviously, they can degrade over time. So the team kind of has to strategize when should we change them, and what tire set should we start with. The other thing that you need to know, I mean, there's a million, you can Google what do I need to know before watching a Formula One race, and they're going to tell you a bunch of boring shit. Basically, these are the only two things that they talk about constantly on the broadcast that might not be intuitive. So there's this thing called DRS, which is like the abbreviation for the drag reduction system. Essentially what this is, to make Formula One more interesting, I don't know, maybe I'm just being cynical, but in my opinion, to make the F1 more interesting, it seems like somewhere along the way they were like, if only there was a way to make people take over easier, and they were like, sick, we've got it. So what happens when you put on your DRS, you open a little flappy on the back of your car so that drag is reduced and they can just zip around and take over. But this can only be applied in certain places on the track, which are called DRS zones. And as someone who went to the Formula One last year, they just straight up have signs that say DRS. So like DRS is okay between here and here. And you can only use DRS to overtake if you're within a second of one another. Like if you're out of there, you better not fucking do that. Otherwise you'll get some kind of penalty. Speaking of penalties and rules, what are they good for? My cynicism here is because ever since I've graduated from just watching Drive to Survive to actually watching the races, it seems like they play a little fucking fast and loose with the rules, and it's a bit of they apply for some but not for all. But fuck it, y'all are new to this and I'm not gonna bore you with that. So, race rules. Basically, all cars have to pit at least one time during the race, aka they have to run at least 2 sets of tires. So say you start in your mediums, at some point you have to change it up and put on either soft or hard. But yeah, the way it's like affectionately referred to is you got to pit at least once. You got to drive into the little pit zone, have all the guys come over like and fuck around, and then you zoom back off. You're also not allowed to make contact with anyone else. It's a no contact sport, which is a fucking bummer, because here's me watching it being like, why doesn't the more powerful car simply push the other ones off the road? Allegedly, that's not allowed because people have died or some boring shit. But like, I would do far worse for far less if I was making like $100 million a year racing. Drivers also have to keep one wheel inside the white painted line at a time. Again, my thinking is, if it's all that serious, why do you have so many extra areas where I can like zip off and take a little break? Anyway, do that. Otherwise you get in trouble. You can't, so say you pitted because you want to change your tires or something's gone wrong, and over the radio they're like, yo, Aaron, pit, come back. We need our guys to go rummage on the car a little bit. I pit, but I'm pissed off because I'm like, fuck you guys. I want to race, baby. I want to win. If I go zooming the fuck out and like make someone else like, holy shit, Aaron's come out, that's not good. You can't leave the pit lane in a manner that impedes the other races. Play nicely. And also inside the pit lane, there's a speed of 80 kilometers per hour. The reason I focused on these ones here was because these ones, not often, but they're the most commonly broken. So if you see random things coming up being like a penalty, a fine, a point reduction, this or that, usually because of these things where someone's a little cheeky. Outside of the actual race rules, we also, excuse me, have just broad Formula One rules. Not going to bore you with these because it's a little detail heavy, but basically there's just shitloads of rules regarding the cars and their development. Like I said, all these teams, all these cars, they're at like the forefront of technical advancements. They're very fucking secretive about what they do. Like none of the teams talk to each other about what they're doing or innovating or working on. But ultimately, long story short, it's super controlled in an effort to level the playing field. Because obviously, if you had like one team investing $1 billion into, I don't know, innovating their fucking little flappy or the DRS overtake or the batteries or something like that, they'll just win the fuck out of it. So in the past, there have been big scandals where certain teams have been like alleged to spend more money than they're allowed to, and that's been a big hubbub. And yeah, drama abounds due to like side eyes between the teams, because some people are like, yo, there's no fucking way you've been spending over the spending cap, blah, 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 boring, we don't care. Flags. This is another one. This is a boring slide, but you kind of have, excuse me, my goodness, I'm just getting excited thinking about the cars. Am I right, ladies? Flags. You just kind of have to know because it's relevant. Yellow means some shit's gone down, slow down a little bit, be careful. 2 yellows means just can you prepare to slow down? Something's fucking happened, relax. A green flag means sick, problem solved, off you go. Race continues. A red flag means the track is proper fucking unsafe. Drive home, go to your little pit lane because they've got little garages in there too. Go to your garage, we'll figure this shit out. This is always an interesting time because this is when all of the exciting strategy stuff happens, really. I'll go more into this if you want, or if we watch the race together and it happens. But essentially, you remember I said they have to change their tires and pit at least once. So a lot of teams are like, do we do it now? What if it was too early? What if later on we need to pit again? Should we put on the soft so that you can do an overtake, or should we, you know, put on the hard so you can just stay out and not have to pit again? Because pits can take like, typically they can take like 0.5 to 2 seconds. So if you're only 2 seconds behind someone, fuck it, let's just put on your hard tires. You can make up the space, and when the other guy pits, you're off. Anyway, it's all very interesting stuff. There's also a whole bunch of like strategy because when the red flag's over, sometimes, sorry, on the red and the yellow, on a red flag, they just start all over again in the grid. But on a yellow flag, they bring out what's called a safety car. So it's like, oh, slow down, things have happened, get behind the safety car. And she's going like 80 kilometers an hour, basically. And they have to like line up in the order that they were racing in. And then eventually the safety car peels off and they race off. So it's just an interesting time. When we see flags, problematic yellows or reds, something might happen. It's very interesting. Black and white is basically you're fucked up, someone's been unsportsman, and it's like a warning. Ship up or shape up, you fucking bitch, or you're out. A black flag to a driver is like, that's it, get the fuck away, go to your room, race control disqualified, you suck. Checkered flag, boring, just means the race is over, aka Max Verstappen has won the Grand Prix. So, some things to expect on race day. It's usually 40 to 60 laps, typically 40, and the race usually goes for about 2-ish hours. The grid lineup is, do I go into more detail here? No, I don't. So the grid lineup is, like I said, informed by how everyone went yesterday at qualifying, and it can be all over the place. So the teams, sometimes they're close to their teammate, but often it's just kind of a mismatch. You'll have different people up the front or behind, depending on how they went, but they sit there, they wait, the lights kind of indicate to them like, all right, we're going, here it comes. And then Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, they're off, they're racing. Something to note is points. Basically, the points in the rundown of the points is how we determine who wins at the end of the year, and also how teams are progressing and how they're performing that year. The top 10 of the 20 people, so there's 20 people in a race, because there's 10 teams and you have 2 drivers each, so 10 times 2 equals 20. The top 10 finishers get some points of some variety. The rest, too bad, so sad, literally go cry about it. First place gets 25 points, second gets 18, third gets 15, and down we go. The other thing is that if you get the fastest lap, ooh, fun, and you're in the top 10, you also get an extra point, which is nice. You also get points in sprint races, but fuck sprint races, I don't want to talk about them. So here's our lineup for this year. Let me just move my little headpiece because we're going to have to do just a little bit of explaining up here. Oh, okay, well, I've accidentally frozen my computer. Let me try and do that way more fucking carefully. May I fucking, oh, this computer. All right, let's do a highlighter just because it's a bit less intrusive. So, who is the best performing team? I don't want to give any spoilers because I go into a bit of interesting backstory in a couple of slides, but basically, these guys are the team to be watching. We have Red Bull. They are like the current far and away number ones. The other interesting teams who are kind of battling for second are Mercedes and Ferrari. Outside of Mercedes and Ferrari, in terms of the teams that are doing really well, we have Aston Martin and McLaren. So these guys kind of fight for second place, and these guys kind of fight for third to fourth place. In terms of just dog shit teams who you don't even need to bother looking at, as per how they've been going in recent years, we are talking Haas, boring, go away, we don't care. AlphaTauri, this one's interesting, so it's kind of side-eye, and I'll explain later why that's the case, because basically this team is a feeder team for Red Bull, which means promising young talent from this team, if they do well, they eventually go up here. Alfa Romeo, boring, no one cares. Alpine, again, the only thing that makes them interesting to me is that they constantly crash out. Please see referenced the photo in the group chat where I'm touching one of these cars. And Williams Racing, I mean, once again, just like boring, who cares? I mean, they're both okay drivers, but just they're not doing much interesting. Essentially, it goes like this. These boys up here are battling for the top 10, and these boys down here are battling for being the top of the bottom 20. But it's true. So now I'm going to get my little pen out, and I'm going to just give you some interesting tidbits about stuff. Let's do this color. So in some teams, you have drivers that are doing it to win. Like, it doesn't matter about the team, they just want to do really well. And they can afford to, because on their teams, they're performing well enough that it's like they know they're going to get points if they do okay. And it's case by case. So the reason I'm saying that is because Verstappen, who wins every single fucking race by like 40 seconds, Perez is basically just there to be his cum dumpster. Like, Perez is basically just there to support Verstappen. On the other hand, when you have a look at a team like Mercedes, it's kind of like, well, Russell might do better than Hamilton. So we're going to have to wait to see what happens in qualifying to see who's going to support who. The same is said for Leclerc and Sainz, as well as like teams like Norris and Piastri. The rest of them down here are just fighting for their fucking lives, if I'm being honest. So like there's a lot of drama between Gasly and Ocon. Ocon's actually, again, another one that we're kind of eyes peeled on because he's interesting. These guys, who cares, literally forget they exist until I see them. There's some interesting stuff going on with these two. which again, I can explain in my next tutorial because it's a bit much to go into. But basically, this is interesting as well because Ricardo once upon a time drove up here and he ruined it all. I explained that in a later slide. And Tsunoda is a fucking maniac. Like, he is extremely, I guess, he doesn't like to lose. He doesn't like people to think he can lose, blah, 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 blah. The reason you don't see me explaining this team is because essentially Lance Stroll is daddy's favorite. His dad owns the team and he's the team principal. This man is only in this seat because his daddy loves him. Alonso, on the other hand, let me get another color. Alonso, on the other hand, is our boy. He is so consistent. He's been racing for like 20 years. Marlo, he's been racing for like 20 years or something. He's so consistent. He's always like in the top 5 of every race unless something happens. He's just a great racer. And so naturally, it's not even a case of is Stroll supporting Alonso. It's just kind of Stroll is like out here fighting for his fucking life. And my boy Alonso is just making it through, doing an excellent job while he's at it. So, a little bit of backstory. Once upon a time, there was a man named Lewis Hamilton, and he kind of dominated the Formula One. He also dated Nicole Scherzinger and Rihanna, among other people. This is Lewis. You might recognize him. He's really famous. A little bit about Lewis. I went into it being like, fuck that guy. He expects everything. He's such a loser. And the reason that I had that, and I haven't been able to completely let it go, even though I'm trying to at the moment, is because Marcus told me that technically speaking, it makes his driving poorer because he insists on wearing his hair in a particular kind of cornrow. So like, I'm not even coming for him for wearing like a natural hair protecting style. It's not even about that. It's the specific way that he does his hair in plaits. That means his his helmet doesn't sit properly. And this guy's like, nah, fuck you, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Similarly with his jewelry, he refuses to take his jewelry off to race again, even though like it's a safety hazard and it actually affects his driving. I was always just like, I don't like that. That being said, I'm starting to realize he's actually probably a really wonderful person. And he's exactly the amount of a cunt that I would be if I was as rich and successful as him and I knew that the sport kind of relied on me. He won 7 world championships in a row for Mercedes. But along comes a man named Max Verstappen. Here he is. So everyone was so stoked, and I later referenced the season you can watch this on Netflix on Drive to Survive. Because all of a sudden they're like, sick, the Hamilton Reign of Terror is over. Our sleepy-eyed dreamboat is going to be like, put the fuck out because this haunting sweetheart who has absolutely no stage presence or personality, literally just does it because he loves car racing, has come along. Wait a second, not like that. Max has been literally dominating for 4 years. And I don't even mean like, just gets it at the end and he wins the championship. It's like there are races where Max, they don't even film Max anymore. Like in the races, they just let you know Max is in front. And then all of the excitement is on the other team players, like all the other drivers. Just assume Max is going to win. It's boring. So yeah, Marlo, I'm speaking, I'm teaching. Max won last year after smashing the other drivers all year, winning all but one race. He literally got like 3rd in a race and the rest he came 1st. Insanity. This is a guy named Perez. So he is the second, he is the kind of second Red Bull racer, and he's the one I explained before. Essentially, you remember I was saying it's kind of, is it the car or is it the driver? Put it this way, Max is coming first, Perez is, who they also call Checo, Perez is coming second because the Red Bull car is just so much better than everyone else racing. Like they are killing it. So there's probably better drivers out there for like Ferrari and Mercedes than Perez, but Perez is older, he's more reliable, he's a good team player. So he often comes second in each race, and he came second in the championships because their car is just so much better than everyone else's. So a little more about last year. Essentially, the final placements for the championship were, we've got Verstappen on first, we've got Perez on second. I can't remember where these three lined up, but essentially they were the others of the top five. And it just goes to show I wasn't lying to you because, yeah, you can see a little Ferrari jacket, you can see a Mercedes jacket, and an Aston Martin jacket. He races with Daddy's favorite, don't forget. These are just guys who do really well. These are the ones you expect to do well in every race. So if you decide to watch next weekend with us here, just these are the names where you're like, if they're up the top, we might be excited that they're going to beat a Red Bull, but we expect them to be there. Oh, I'm contractually obliged to talk about Daniel Ricciardo. He's Australian. He's the season one darling of Drive to Survive because essentially he's just not completely brain dead and can talk. He can talk to a camera. He seems like a lovely person, but he got a little bit big for his boots driving at Red Bull. Yes, you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. This man, one of the best drivers on the grid while he was racing with Red Bull, was riding alongside Max Verstappen when Max first started all those years ago. And this guy goes, you know what? I think I want more money. So he fucked off to McLaren. And wouldn't you know it, biggest mistake of his fucking career, quickly proved that the car was doing a lot of the fucking muscle there because started doing really poorly, often fell outside of the top 10, just did a shitty job. Last year, 2023, embarrassment. McLaren was like, get out of here. And he just kind of became Red Bull's bitch boy. Like he wasn't even racing. He didn't even race last year. He just like went and basically was like, hi, and like did interviews and signed things and did like sponsorships. Very fucking embarrassing. It's a humiliation ritual if you ask me. And then this year, he's back on the grid. They've put him back on, but as you may remember, he's been put on with Yuki Tsunoda into that Red Bull feeder team. People are interested to see what he does. However, the vast majority of people who are like proper Formula One fans, like Marcus, just think he should leave. Like, just, God, get out of here. Like, come on, this is embarrassing. Because he's not doing that great. Like, it's just a bit fucking, like, get out of here. Anyway, I've got to talk about the man. Anyway. Oh, ooh, okay, hang on. So this slide is supposed to be about what a team principal is and why should I care, but this photo shouldn't be here. Oh, fuck. Okay, hang on. Oh, you can't even see that one. Hang on, let me, oh my God, just hang, I'm so sorry. Just wait a second. Just, I'm so sorry. What? I can't, okay, that, I mean, that is so, oh, okay. Oh. So, sorry, this is what I was supposed to show on the last slide. It's just about what a team principal is and why should you care. That was exceptionally unprofessional of me. Pretend you didn't see that last slide. Essentially, the team principal is the decision makers. They decide everything from who's going to be driving, are they going to like poach someone else? They give the go ahead on car changes. This is why if you're listening during the race, you'll often hear them talk about like, oh, he's really regretting doing this, or like, oh, I wonder if the changes that they have in store are playing out, blah, 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 or they'll like look at their body or facial language and be like, oh, he seemed disappointed by that. I'm guessing that blah, blah, blah. They're basically the boss of the actual driving team. Obviously, there's like money and politics and power above, but the team principal is the guy that decides everything. So who are they? Sometimes it's just a rich guy who loves cars. Sometimes it's just a rich guy who loves cars and his son, if you remember, Aston Martin, Daddy's favorite. And sometimes, usually, it is an industry professional with a lot of experience, often with different teams as well that you see. They've often been involved in F2 and F3 and the academy. And then they just become a rich guy who loves cars as well. So, what do you do now? You watch Drive to Survive on Netflix. There's 6 seasons. I don't expect you to watch them all. Basically, 53% of polled Formula One fans have stated that they became fans after watching the show. So if you're going to watch them, this is the ones I recommend. Watch the first season, first episode. It's called All to Play. It's just going to give you an introduction from the voice of Daniel Ricciardo, who you will recall I was contractually obliged to introduce you to. I would also suggest watching season 3, episode 9. The beginning's not going to make a lot of sense. It's a little boring because they're talking about like the politics of like, because the drivers aren't promised a next season, basically. It's actually really up in the air a lot of the time. Some of the big players, you'll remember when I did the cut, a lot of these guys are kind of safe, but these guys especially are not so safe, unless your daddy's favorite. But something massive happens in this episode. Big episode, speaks to the like actual stakes of this this sport and how fucking brutal it can be. And it's a fan favorite. Everyone reckons it's the best episode of the show. If you get through those and you're still excited, watch all of season 4, because if you remember back when I gave you my like history backstory of the like, will anyone ever beat Hamilton? We're sick and tired of seeing Hamilton win. That is the season where you watch Max Verstappen beat Hamilton, aka Red Bull beat Mercedes, play out in real time over the course of the racing season. It's really interesting. And I cannot emphasize enough, been with Marcus for 15 years. He has watched Formula One my entire life that I've been with him, the entire time I've known him. I've shown zero interest in Formula One because to me, it's boring. Cargo vroom, I could care less. This show is the reason that I know and recognize almost everyone on the grid, everyone that they're interviewing, because it's like reality and it's so realistic because it's obviously not script. Well, I mean, now some of the interviews and stuff seem a little bit, how's your father? But it's so interesting. Just put it on while you do other shit. Like, it's just basically every episode follows one team mainly or one big thing that happened in the season. So you'll meet everyone. It's great. I seriously recommend just watch those 2 episodes and season 4, because yeah, there's 6 seasons. You don't have to watch them all. The one for last year was kind of boring. But yeah, like if you really want, if you have the time, if you can like cram all that in a couple of days, which if you were me, you'd be able to. Because I'm an iPad kid, even though I was born in 1994, and I like to have a million different stimulus going at once. So next lesson, if you would like one, I will go into some drama off the track. Mainly we'll be focusing on the segment, If You Want to Be My Lover, I'd Prefer You Didn't Fuck My Assistant, Jerry Halliwell, Christian Horner, aka Horny, and the drama around him fucking his assistant. Also Toto Wolff explored, because we saw completely accidentally, again, I'm so sorry about that, a little bit on him now, but I would like to go into more detail in a future installment. Well, thank you very much for coming to class today. It was really great getting to sit down with you and have this discussion. Hopefully I'll hear from you soon. And as we know, this Saturday is Grand Prix Melbourne. Devastated not to be there. I can't believe how fucking stupid I was a few months ago when I said no to getting tickets. But just know it'll never happen again. Anyway, love you. Bye. Broom, broom. Lights off and away we go.